Do you need to be muted? They're going to put it on YouTube. I like those. Let's see if the glitter's better. That's really the problem. So I'm trying not to light you directly, but I do have to light you.
Hello, I am Susan Langenhennick with the Preservation Resource Center, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm excited to be here with Tara Shaw. Many in New Orleans, she will not need any introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. Tara has been importing antiques for 20 years and also has a custom furniture line and a licensed product line with Restoration Hardware. She's a designer who has done many houses locally, but also around the country and around the world. And she has a new book out, Soul of the Home, Designing with Antiques. And so we wanted the opportunity to sit down with Tara and ask her all the things that we have always wanted to know about her design style and her beautiful aesthetic. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Well, I've been thumbing through your book for the past, month or so, having it right by my bedside table because it's just beautiful. And anyone who loves design books will just get a kick out of this one because the images just draw you in to every single one of these beautiful rooms. They have so many layers to them that they just, every time you open it, you see something new. So congratulations on the book.
Thank you. I just, I love hearing that. I love to hear the takeaway from everybody. And it's so different. I just wanted to introduce people to Antiquity if they really Didn't know that much about it, which is really my story when I first started collecting. So thanks so much. Makes me feel good.
Well, let's start at the beginning. For people who aren't as familiar with your work, tell us how you got into, well, you've had quite a journey of different careers. You started in fashion, then became an importer of antiques, then became a custom furniture designer and a designer. So tell us the progression.
So I actually went to college for education, for elementary ed, and I stood in front of my second grade class and I thought, oh my gosh, I have missed my calling. And I had a meeting with myself and I thought, what do I spend really all my money on? And frankly, it was fashion at the time. I mean, I just loved clothing and shoes. And so I thought I would give the apparel industry a try. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I went to New York and I got multiple lines that I represented. I opened 2 showrooms in Dallas at the apparel market. And I worked in that industry for about 7 years out of New York and Dallas. And one of the lines I represented was purchased by Liz Claiborne. And, it changed my life because I was able to buy really nice furniture for the first time in my life. And I thought, wow, I can't make a mistake. I want to buy something that I will love for the rest of my life. So that started the journey. And I read every shelter magazine from Veranda, World of Interiors, um, Architectural Digest, any design book that I could get my hands on, or, encyclopedias on furniture, because I thought I can't make a mistake. I don't want to. I need to find out. Country French was really prevalent at my time of collecting, first starting to collect. And I thought, I really don't know if that's who I am. And so I studied Swedish and French, and I just thought about the mixtures. And the next thing I know was I took all of my money except one house note and bought a 20-foot container of Antiquity in Europe. And that is where the journey started, on Chapatulas in the public mini storage in a 10 by 30 space. And everything sold out in about 10 minutes. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is really it, because now I can import a container, work in Europe, and keep one nice piece of furniture a container. So I, gave my apparel business to the people that worked for me, my reps, and I just launched into Europe and never looked back.
So you were living in New Orleans at that point.
Right. I'd moved to New Orleans. I fell in love with all my family is in Austin, Texas, live in Austin, Texas. They still ask me when I'm moving back home. But, I fell in love with New Orleans. I married a New Orleanian, Robert Walsh, who is an attorney at Jones Walker. And, we have 1 degree of separation, I think, from everybody in the city if you're a native New Orleanian. But so the architecture just wooed me. I couldn't get past the Victorians, frankly, and bought and lived in two since I now live in my 3rd home here that is not a Victorian, but just fell in love with the city.
So you were working out of the Port of New Orleans and traveling for 5-6 weeks at a time to Europe?
Right. So I would spend about 2 weeks in each country.
Mhm.
And so about 5 or 6 weeks, and I started really whining, I think about the third week though. I'd be I'd be like, what am I doing? But so I started filling these 40-foot high cube containers and just shipping them back and selling them to the trade. I love things I've never seen before, one of a kind finds, which really we base, all of our design on. So it's magical, really.
And so you had like this incredible sort of treasure trove of um, antiques coming in. But then at some point, I think in 2007, you started designing Maison, your custom line. Is that correct?
Right.
Tell us about
So I've been guerrilla antiquing in the fields then for about 10 or 15 years, I think. So I would notice when I came back to the US, you didn't really see great reproduction lines that had the correct patina or the right proportions and scale. I think one of the things about working in Europe, and you start really early in the morning, which is when dealers start trading amongst themselves. It was like at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd show up with a flashlight. And so I feel that what happened is my eye got trained to what a good patina really is. And I thought, I feel like I can spot an original finish at 4 o'clock in the morning with no flashlight at 100 paces. Because, it was really about the authenticity and not buying repainted furniture and things like that I was really hunting for.
And
And
so, I'm sorry.
so I mentioned to my banker that I said, I feel like there's just this big gap in the market in reproduction, Susan. So he introduced me. He said, I think I might have somebody for you, to one of his clients that he had known 26 years that had a factory in China. So I started working on 46 items. That was my first launch in '07. And I flew to China and worked with the factories and launched the line in '07 with 46 items.
And then it grew and Restoration Hardware reached out to you. Is that correct?
Right. First, Baby and Child came to see me. And then the parent company came to see me. And at that time, it was about 260 items. So they asked me for, they selected a 20-foot truck of items. And then my husband and I flew to their headquarters in Court Madera and just had a long meeting to work out how we would work together.
Do you still have the line there? I know it's
Yes.
incorporated into Restoration Hardware.
Yes, yes, I do.
So all that led up to, and that was probably before you called yourself a designer, really. Like you were a furniture designer, but not an interiors designer. Is that correct?
Well, really, my first design job was right after my second Victorian made the cover of Veranda magazine. So they came to see me. They wanted to see the warehouse. I was unloading the container one day, and they then asked to see my home. And I was covered in dirt, as you can imagine, with a 40-foot container. It's not very glamorous, but so then they called and they said, we'd like to shoot your home and your warehouse. And by the way, would you be a contributing editor? And I thought, oh my gosh, it was the greatest validation I probably had in the furniture industry, really, besides RH and, the reproduction line. But then when Harry Connick Jr. and Jill Goodacre called, they're still dear friends. and said, please come to Connecticut and work with us in our home. I explained that I probably didn't have the bandwidth to do that because I spent so much time in Europe. But, you know, as I said, they could convince you to really do anything. So they convinced me, and I'm so glad they did because, you know, working on people's homes and interiors, I mean, you just start this relationship that lasts for years, and then you work with their children, and it's just really, it's a great journey.
Well, that's quite a first client, you know. So to have Harry Connick Jr. and Jill Goodacre call you and say, "We'd like you to design our house," you pretty much can't say no to that, correct?
Right. That is pretty much a no-brainer.
That is a
So,
no-brainer. Well, we have some, well, before we really even get started with some of the photos, I wanted to tell everybody who's joining us, um, your mic is muted, but you can ask questions through the Q&A and we will get to them. I wanted to chat with Tara and have some questions to her first, and then I'll open it up and read some of your questions. So feel free to type them away and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Daniil, can you go ahead and start showing some of the photos from the book? The slideshow that's starting. So this is her biography. Maybe turn to another. There we go. So how would you describe your aesthetic?
Because I have this love of European things, new and old. I use French, Italian, Swedish, Belgian. So I feel like I sort of pull from each country. Swedish mid-century is big for me, but I would say it's a European inspired, livable home that is anchored with one-of-a-kind items and comfortable contemporary furniture.
Well, so this image that we have up right now is one that's incredibly intriguing to me because you have this tapestry. What is the backstory on that tapestry in that picture?
So that tapestry is, I believe, from Brussels. I think it is probably 17th century. And it is, because a lot of them were ecclesiastical.
Mhm.
I believe that is Esther in her court,
Wow.
because it's a queen with a crown. She's surrounded really by cherubs, and she's got pearls on. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And it just anchors that wall behind that Belgian linen bed.
Well, so that's what's so intriguing about this room to me is that it's this incredible mix of contemporary, very contemporary pieces, like the bench against the wall, the bed, and then this 17th century tapestry. Can you talk a little bit about playing with centuries like that? That's a challenging thing for design.
You know, I feel that whatever the period is, you know, first you really need a client that falls in love with something, or you know, you help them understand one-of-a-kind pieces. And then you really just work the room around the keynote. So my key really is the tapestry. The bed is absolutely practical. The nightstands are contemporary. The lamps are balustrades. The palette in this room is just neutral and serene. The floors are black lacquer. The rug has this iridescent quality to it in a muted tone that really blends into the room. The Mies van der Rohe, I just love contemporary, and they have children, and that's just a great place for them to, you know, hang out or color, because you can wipe down leather. The mirror is 18th century Italian. So and the little pair of tabourets at the foot of the bed are 18th century Swedish. So we have this mixture of Belgian and Swedish and French and Italian. I just think it tells this story of this global loving family. You know, the world is so small now. I mean, so many people used to, before COVID, go to Europe and travel so often. So really, it's just a well collected interior.
Well, and it is. It's a globetrotting interior and also a century-spanning interior. Um, where is this house in New Orleans, or is this somewhere else?
Right. That is New Orleans.
That is in New Orleans. Well, so in your book, I was particularly intrigued. You have a chapter on a couple that you worked with that have a Victorian house here. And you
Right.
specifically spoke about the challenges of working sometimes with grand Victorian architecture. It's beautiful, as we all know. We love our older houses, but it does create some challenges in that some of the rooms are very formal and are not the way we live today. So I thought perhaps you could talk a little bit about making some of those challenges, making some of those very formal spaces conform to a modern family life. Maybe Danielle, can you flip to another screen? Maybe, well, like this is one. This is a beautiful kitchen. But so maybe talk a little bit about how to work with formal spaces.
Okay, I want to address, I hope Danielle gets to that clip, but I want to talk about Victorian architecture since, Susan, that's the chapter you're talking about. A lot of people have double parlors. This house was in the Garden District, and it's has that beautiful wedding cake facade. Who doesn't fall in love with a Victorian? But when you enter into that home, a lot of times it will go foyer, stairwell, and then you have to pass through the dining room to get to the kitchen. And then to the right, you have your formal double parlors. Well, I just feel that for formal, what we did was we just used anchors in the anchor pieces, like grisaille wallpaper in the foyer that actually leads you through there, and it makes it an important room instead of a pass through. And then, just to make the double parlor more relaxed, there were it just became a more casual feel, besides the stiff formal double seating. There is a piano and mid-century chairs and things like that that loosen up that formality in a Victorian. Now, this home is a new build. That was the last three screen captures that Danielle showed, but the first one was the kitchen, and we just used tonal marble, really hip leather stools. And the antiquity there would be the lanterns. Really, they're not even a pair of lanterns, but it just gave this very large, formal, big home a sense of history when you walk in there to see the 19th century jardiniere, the lanterns over the bar area. Danielle, you want to go to the next slide? So this is the living room, and you can see that that's really living with antiquity. The table is 18th century Spanish. There's a piece of art above the table from Brenda Saporito, that really, a local artist that really just made the room. And it's the reason I use those Suzanne pillows to pull out the color in that art. But so the fireplace was reclaimed. I love using antique fireplaces when we're working on new construction. So the great thing is we got in on this, with the architect at the beginning stages. So you're able to place a Beaux Arts fireplace reclaimed. And then we just worked back with key antiques to work with the contemporary furnishings. The little bench is Italian, and it's the Italian. I don't know if you can see the little Savonarola chair. And then there's the Spanish table that really is a predominant piece in the room.
That fireplace is extraordinary. Do you know where it's from?
So it was from the McKenna Mansion that is on the East Coast. And they, tore the mansion down, sadly. And we were able to purchase a fireplace.
Wow. I mean, the fireplace is the stunner of the room that then draws you in to all the other pieces. The chair in the back closest to the windows is an intriguing piece too. What is that?
So that is a little brass custom-made chair that's like a corner chair. So really, it was just a fun chair for them, covered in Belgian linen. The piano was another story. So that was a brown piano, and we Venetian plastered it in black.
Wow. And then, so this is a new construction home.
New construction, it is.
Yeah. Danielle, do you want to flip to one more? So that is another space in that room, the arch windows. I mean, the arch.
Right.
hallway.
That is right off of the foyer before you enter into the living room. So those are chandeliers we had made in Paris, and they are rock crystal. And then if you look ahead, you see the Pedro Friedberg chair. There is 19th century pen and ink, and then those pair of mirrors are Italian 18th century. The floor is limestone.
So I think the next slide is some of your custom line. Is that correct, Danielle? You want to flip to this one?
Okay. In the first chapter of the book, Susan, I talk about Louis XIII, Louis XIV, Louis XV, Louis XVI, Swedish. This is from the first chapter of the book. And then I talk about mid-century, empire and mid-century. So what I wanted to do was give people an overview of what periods are that I use in design. So this is Swedish furniture. So we just wanted to help people identify what they really like so they can purchase it or talk about it with their designer.
One thing about the Swedish antiques is that they're lighter. They feel lighter sometimes than some of the other European countries. The finishes are lighter. Does that work? Is that something that's sort of an easier fit sometimes when people are fitting in an antique to their aesthetic for the first time?
I think a lot of times people start brown. And what Swedish does is it really does not conflict with anything, frankly. I can use it with traditional French furniture, like a beautiful directoire table. But I feel like it is like the white shirt, the crisp white shirt that you have in your closet. It is something that, will always look chic and tailored, and it just fits everywhere. You're absolutely right.
And so you predominantly go to France, Belgium, Sweden. You said, what are your favorite countries to find antiques, and tell us some stories about some of that hunting.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm the Lucille Ball of the furniture business. I have to tell you, and occasionally I'll bring friends with me, and they are definitely the Ethel. I have gotten in more trouble. I mean, just all sorts of strange circumstances when I'm working over there. One time, I was not married to Robert Walsh at the time, but he gave me a what is it called? A GPS, one of those things. I had driven just with a map through all these countries myself. So I am in Belgium and I'm listening to this Garmin or whatever it is. And it takes me down a road I had never been down before to get to this dealer's house, that's out in the woods, has chickens, the whole 9 yards. And so I am going down the road and my head is just bobbing up and down like this because the road had all these big dips in it. And I see these walkers in the country, this group of walkers, men and women walking down this road, and they're looking at me so strangely. And I'm thinking, wow. So I find some things at the dealer, get back in the car. The Garmin tells me to go down this road again. And so then they see me doing this again. I frankly think I was driving through the forest, led by the Garmin in a walking path. One time it tried to take me down a bike path. So, you can go to jail for that. But, I have done all sorts of things for furniture. Before débalages would open the next day, a lot of times I would go in with the dealers and, frankly, under a blanket, like a piece of furniture. So I would then peruse the whole fair, before anybody got in, which is, I don't know what to say about that behavior today, but it was just a lot of fun.
How did you make those connections? Like, when you first started, did you already have friends over there that introduced you to some of the dealers?
No, not really. I just found out where the fairs were, Susan, and I would just show up for the fairs. And I think, once you get to know a lot of these people, as I said, I mean, it's just such a small world that they are so happy to see you. And, cash is king. So they are really happy to see you.
Right.
And, then you meet their friends and so the story goes.
Well, so when you sat down to write this book, what was important to you? Like, what did you want people to learn from the book or enjoy the most from the book?
I wanted people to really embrace antiquity.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to understand, because, it took me years and years of working in the field, the fields in Europe, and also, all this research before I ever bought my first item, which I still have.
What was it?
It was an armoire that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It has the most beautiful burl wood panels. It has a Louis XIV gilded base. It has a gilded shell or coquille crown. I have never seen another like it. It started in my living room. It housed my television. Then it moved to a guest room. So right now it resides in the cabana. So I just wanted people to understand the depth that antiquity really gives to a design project, because, I would see a lot of repetitive design. And I thought, antiques are really affordable. And frankly, they can be so much more affordable than new furniture. And your house will not look like someone else's home if you're using pieces that you fall in love with, that are one of a kind finds, as your anchor in those rooms. It really will reflect your personality. So I just wanted to share my love of old things, and show them how they work with contemporary.
Well, that's a big highlight in the book, and something that I found the most intriguing when I'm sitting there staring at these beautiful rooms that you've designed is the way that they play off each other. That, thinking people feel, I shouldn't say people, I sometimes feel trapped when I'm in my own home looking around going, well, I'm not sure an antique would fit here because I'm doing some more contemporary things in this room. Well, that just seemed like an odd mix. But the odd mix can be intriguing. But it's hard still to do it right. Are there tips that you can give us?
Oh my gosh, it really, truly, it's not that hard. I just want to say, start, let's say you have a need. You have a need in your foyer, and you're not happy with the way your foyer looks. Well, I would consider, an antique console. I would consider an antique chest. I would put, one of, you might already own it, a beautiful contemporary piece of art above it. And it's going to give your home this rich feeling of a well collected home that you will never have from all contemporary. Or let's say you need a dining table, search for something that would really be meaningful for you for the rest of your life. Really, you shouldn't be throwing your dining tables away. I mean, that's like a lifetime purchase. Let's look at this dining table. This is in Old Metairie. And their home is really designed around the exterior of the home. They live outside. There's a French fountain to the right when you open the French doors. There's a pool to the left, with a whole wall of French doors. In the back, there is just a vine-covered pergola where they cook in their brick oven outside and have dinner. So doesn't that sound charming? So they said, we want this relaxed feel in our house. And I thought, well, let's bring the outside in. So I looked for something like this very unique table base that is a vintage fragment from Europe. And then we put a contemporary marble top, like a thick 5 centimeter on top, just to make it feel current. The chairs are contemporary. The chandelier is 18th century Italian. The enfilade, or the buffet on the back wall, is a French ebonized buffet with a marble top. The artist is a local artist, Lynn Sanders, and we're representing her in our new showroom on Magazine Street. Then right across from that, instead of a serving piece, we used a Swedish secretary. And so they keep all their collected plates that they love to, travel in Europe. So they have a series of collected plates in there. Plus it actually acts as a secretary where they can write notes and things like that, or you can close that front. So it's just an interesting way to incorporate antiquity into a new home.
Well, so this room is intriguing because what's in this room does sort of, like when you say this, it makes me feel like that table could be outside. It has that feel like it could be in the garden almost, or in the dining room. Do you have to do a lot of work refinishing these pieces when you're finding them?
I never really do that.
Okay.
And when I keep a piece for myself, I never restore it, refinish it. Maybe I'll glue the leg back on if it fell off, but I'm just not into that. I like seeing, like, my breakfast room table is 18th century Swedish. So you can imagine, all the families that ate on that table. So there's scars and stains and missing paint. But, I really embrace that. I love that.
So you buy them and sort of keep them, like you wouldn't change a finish.
Right. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. I mean, I guess part of the history is what's so intriguing with them. Do you find that I don't know, when I look at antiques, I often do what you just said, wonder about the family that sat at that table 100 years ago and had Christmas dinner there or celebrated birthdays around that. And it really does sort of make you feel like you're just a steward versus an owner, like, it's going to live on beyond me. And I think that's with the preservation resource center, so much of what we do with our historic buildings is that you feel like you're the current steward of these beautiful pieces of architecture, and you hope they live on there were families before you were living in them, and that there'll be families after you living in them. So, Danielle, let's see the next slide. Oh, there, back to the one more of the rooms. If you have another room, where is it? Sorry. Ah. We'll get there. I thought we had more pictures of the houses. Well, tell us about the new Magazine Street showroom.
Goodness, I am so excited to walk to work. Susan, it's a block and a half from my house. And who didn't love that building, the National Art and Hobby? I mean, who didn't have great memories there? And when it went up for sale, I thought, I am going to be so sad to see, if I don't buy this building. So I did, and it's just been a very interesting journey to make it our new showroom. So I hope everybody loves it. I wanted it to feel like it fit in the neighborhood. I didn't want a contemporary facade on a Victorian building, or it's really turn of the century. But so it's been a labor of love.
So the first floor is a showroom, and then do you have apartments upstairs?
There are 4 just beautiful rentals upstairs.
Wow.
So I bleached those floors and, just made them a little more current.
Mm-hmm. And so this will be open only to the trade, or is it going to be open to the public?
Oh my gosh, no, we are so delighted. We are open to anyone that would love to come.
Well, when do you actually open? I don't think the building is open yet, is it?
Right. No, we will officially be open in about 3 weeks.
Okay, great. Well, we can't wait to see it. Because you've been in a couple of locations. You were at the port for a while, and so is this the first showroom that you've had that's sort of a public-facing showroom?
This is. Now, I bought a building at 1240 Camp in Thalia that it was very similar to this building. It was 2 buildings that had been put together. So, that was my first big showroom after the Port of New Orleans. But this is my first, retail space really on Magazine Street. I'm very excited.
Well, I want to answer a few of the questions. We're getting some good questions someone said, what is your favorite paint finish or brand?
Oh boy, I should be paid by Benjamin Moore is all I can say. I use a lot of Benjamin Moore paint, and I use a lot of fine paints of Europe also. So my favorite whites, and I get this question a lot, will be White Dove, which is the color of the exterior and the interior of the Magazine Street building. I love linen white. I must be part Swedish because I am really attached to paint and whites. But I also, fine paints of Europe has been a very dramatic paint for me, because if you look at the Victorian, the double parlor, that's in a very high gloss marine finish. Or if you look at my dining room, the same thing. I also use the Benjamin Moore Aura, A-U-R-A, because what that does is it sort of gives you a no luster flat, but it reads like a plaster. So it like a texture. It's great paint.
And then in many of the houses, historic houses that you've worked in, still have plaster walls. Do you keep the plaster, or do you encourage your clients to switch it out to sheetrock?
Oh no, I would definitely keep plaster.
I mean, it's harder to work with in some ways, is it?
Yes, it is. But so you just hire the right painters.
And but there is no difference. I mean, when you see a room with original plaster, the difference is quite dramatic. Now, many of your rooms are white. Talk to us about using white. Why white? I mean, do you ever paint with colors on the walls?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's one or two rooms in the book. One room has a gray in a boudoir, but and then a turquoise sofa. But you know, I think white is such a great backdrop. And you know, I've just been working on something with a lot of color. So it's a lot of times it's what the client is
Mhm.
asking for. It's not necessarily what I would choose because, you know, I can work in color. I can really do anything. But, you know, I'm trying to be a good listener and then give them this long-term home that they're going to love for
Mhm.
years and years. And then I come back years later and we do reupholstery and rearrange furniture and buy some new things, you know, here and there to make it feel like a refresh.
Um, so many of your rooms look so stunning, but you have to wonder, do these families have children? Because can they live in these spaces with these beautiful, priceless antiques?
You know, that's a great point. The bedroom we looked at with
Mhm.
the black lacquer floor, that family has 4 children. And the beautiful hallway with the rock crystal, yeah, 4 children. So rock crystal chandelier, they have 3 children. So what I know about antiquity is that it has survived many generations, you know, and it's still there. I mean, that's still a beautiful pair of 18th century mirrors. And so if the child breaks off one of the ornaments on the bottom thing, then you just glue it back on. And, you know, it just becomes the character of the mirror.
It sounds to me that you don't think of anything as too precious
Oh, no, I think it's supposed to be used.
and lived in.
Used and lived in and loved like the generations before it. You know, they weren't afraid to use that in their home.
Mhm.
And, you know, it survived.
So I have a wonderful question here, and someone says, can you name any of the favorite historic, do you have any favorite historic building interiors in New Orleans that have influenced or helped shape your own eye? Like anything, any historic buildings that have influenced you?
You know, Susan, I really can't. The moment that question came out, I went blank. I thought, oh my gosh. You know, I've been in so many.
Mhm. No, I know it can be hard off the cuff to ask that. Someone does want to know about the dog on your cover of your book.
Now that's an easy answer for me. That is brother Luca. He is named after Lucca, Italy. He is 10 years old. He's a whippet. And his predecessor was Jack Shaw, who worked at my 1240 location on Camp Street. So brother will be in the new showroom. He loves going to work. He tests out all the furniture.
Well, so this room is in your house.
That's my living room.
Mhm. Well, tell us a little bit about this space and some of the pieces in it. That incredible candle holder on the wall, that
Right.
sconce.
Right. That is a pair, Susan. Those are from Lucca, Italy. And in all these years of importing, I've only had 3 pair.
Mm.
And they were known for that carving. And I thought it was the perfect thing to flank that contemporary piece of art. The sofa is French. There's a little bronze contemporary table, you know, on the end with the Julie Silvers, one of her pottery pieces, one of my favorite, you know, pottery artists here. The mirror over the mantle is 17th century Spanish.
Mm.
And the chaise is Le Corbusier, and the coffee table is made from an 18th century Italian altar, just with a new piece of marble on top.
Mhm.
Brother is on an 18th century Swedish daybed, and we call that his cloud. You know, he jumps on he jumps on that, throw and poses. I love it.
Mhm.
And oh, the armoire is the anchor. You know, the television is in that, the media is in that, and it's 18th century. It's stripped oak with some of the most beautiful carving I had ever seen.
So this is a room, so if you have a TV in it, is this a casual room for y'all? Is this a room that you hang out in?
Yes, we hang out there.
So, TVs are a thing with design. It's like some people just don't want them on their walls. I mean, I know I personally don't want it in the middle of my living room. And it's sort of a battle with my husband. It's like, I don't want to hang that thing. I want to put it away where you can't see it. Although we do watch TV and we do love it. Do you have any other tricks? I know besides putting it in an armoire?
Gosh, I usually listen to the clients. When we were working on that home with that gorgeous Beaux Arts fireplace, it almost had a television over it. And I thought, do you think we could maybe have a television in the kitchen and then in the bedroom? So I softly tiptoed around that Beaux Arts fireplace, but it really, some people want to see their television. I'm always trying to hide a television.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's in an armoire or, a piece of a piece of furniture that houses it where you really don't see it. It's really my preference because I want to close it away because I don't watch it television all the time.
Right. I imagine it's a lot of tug of war in a lot of families where some people want it out and some people don't want it out. And but it's part of our lives, and you definitely have to make these rooms livable. Someone has an interesting question here about working around a mural, like in a historic room that might have a mural. Obviously, would you play off the colors in it, or have you ever worked with one?
Oh, yes. So, obviously they love the mural, right? So I would try and connect it. I would do everything to connect to it,
Mhm.
whether it is, in paint colors or it's in the fabric you're using on your dining chairs, if it's in your dining room.
Mhm.
It's all about connectivity really in these projects. You should have a thread of connectivity through all the rooms so people don't, you don't want schizophrenic design. So, play off that mural, carry those colors into another room, embrace it.
Mm-hmm. Someone is asking about, this is a wonderful one. How do you start collecting antiques if you are on a budget? Like, is there a piece that you would start with?
So, yeah, I think like a good chest, because I'll never forget. My first piece was an armoire. I was searching really for a desk. I went out to buy a desk. And then I turned the corner and there was that armoire. And I thought, I am going to regret it if I don't take that thing home with me, even though I was looking for a desk. So I feel like you have to buy what really speaks to you.
Mhm.
But, practical things will always stay in your home. So one time I had a chest in my foyer, and then from my foyer, it moved to one of my bedrooms and then to another bedroom. So I think, there are so many avenues now. eBay, auction houses, where you can really get a good buy.
Mhm.
And that's where I would start, stick to your budget, buy something you love, buy something practical that that you'll have with you, and, and use it where you need it. Let's say I needed a piece of furniture in my foyer, but now really it's my bedside table.
Mhm.
So
Well, it sounds to me like, a lot of people think about buying antiques as well as buying artwork as an investment, but really it's about buying what you need and what you love. Should you look at it as an investment piece? I mean, some antiques can be quite expensive.
So, you know, investment to me, I I said furniture was the greatest investment I ever made because, I'm surrounded by what I love.
Hmm.
I don't know what is more valuable than that.
Hmm.
And, if it has, risen in value, all the better.
Hmm.
But still, for me, it's always about being comfortable and loving waking up and looking around your house and saying, "Oh my gosh, that was so much, I remember when I bought that." Or so I really think, yes, it can be an investment. Certainly people buy for investment, but I would encourage you, if you're starting an antique collection, to buy things you want to be surrounded by when you walk through your home, that make you smile.
Hmm. Well, so one person has a question, and I think this is something that I'm interested in as well. If a piece has been repaired once or twice, does that change its value? Does it matter when you're looking at something and buying it?
For me, it really doesn't
Hmm.
because, if something is a true antique, it's probably had repairs.
Hmm.
And as I said, I would buy it just because, number one, it's a one of a kind find. It's not manufactured. Number two, if the repair has been done well and it's, not noticeable to the eye, or even if it's a pleasing repair, that doesn't diminish it in value to me.
And other people are asking, like, how do you determine the value of something? Are there appraisers that you turn to, or to
You
authenticate
know,
a piece?
How do you determine the value of antiquity? Well, if it's antiquity that you own, you can always call an auction house and
Mhm.
they will come out and give you estimates of what they think they could sell it for at auction. So as far as value, it has to be valuable to you to want to have it in your own home.
Mhm.
That's where the value is for me is, what does that bring into my home and my life and my design.
Mhm.
But as far as buying things because it's an investment, I don't know if I would, take that rabbit trail for design.
Mhm.
Just because, yes, we do buy nice things. And yes, if I see a table that's $8,000 and I know that the rest in the market are 15 to 18,000, obviously that's going to be a good buy, right? So I'm going to encourage the client to pull the trigger.
Mhm. Somebody has a question about scale, and that is something too. Lots of times, antiques can be quite large, like a big armoire or a big table, and it can look hard to get your head wrapped around putting that next to more contemporary furniture that isn't quite that same scale. How do you play with scale in some of your design schemes?
Thank goodness I have a design team because Cheryl is amazing. You should see her with CAD. What we do when we do a presentation, just to make sure, your armoire hasn't eaten your living room, is you CAD that into the space. Because,
Mhm.
scale is extremely important. Before CAD, I would just measure it up and, believe that I understood the room and work from there because I've done a lot prior to CAD. But, today it's easy breezy cover girl with CAD, I mean,
Well, we're lucky in New Orleans, especially in older houses in New Orleans, that we have large ceilings.
Oh, yeah.
Even rooms that are smaller and square footage still feel quite large sometimes because our ceilings are so tall. So we can accommodate
Right.
some of those giant armoires. Somebody has a question about the fabulous wallpaper in your foyer. I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately. I believe it's in
Oh,
the book, isn't it?
it is in my chapter in the book. It's in my second story foyer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe Danielle has that photo because I've seen her round of photos,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a contemporary hand-painted wallpaper by Porter. And I used a Venetian plaster in my foyer upstairs and down in a Benjamin Moore linen white, which is 925. So then what I wanted to do, because when you're walking into my foyer, you're going to see antiquity. You're going to see an 18th century console from the de Medici family. You're going to see an incredible French mirror over it. You're going to see a Swedish bench, but then you're going to see a Richard Serra lithograph and a gold Pedro Friedberg chair. And so when you're walking into this home that has this great sense of antiquity and this huge 18th century Italian chandelier in the foyer, you're going to want some contemporary to connect to that and draw your eye up. So as you enter into my front door, you see that at the top of the stairwell, this big contemporary swath, and it looks like a painting, Susan. So I use the background of my 925 white to connect to the Venetian plaster. And then I did a silver, like a metallic silver. And so it's just, it's the great juxtaposition of antiquity and contemporary.
I mean, that is the story of your book. Is that what is so intriguing to me about that is the way these pieces can be woven into incredibly contemporary spaces and still feel like they fit. We have a wonderful question about somebody who really wants to learn more about Swedish, Belgian, Italian antiques. Do you have any books that you can recommend beyond your own, or museums that you really recommend where people can learn more about antiquity?
You know, when we get to travel again, that's one of the wonderful things I always did is I would always go to museums in each city just because, you just learn so much, just the walking knowledge of each collection and why people collected that. But I would recommend the Encyclopedia of Furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can get that at your local bookstore, hopefully, or on Amazon. You can buy, books on just Swedish antiquity, which I have. I want to know all that I can know because, when you're in the field, you want to recognize something that's really special.
Well, that I think is also a challenge for people who are maybe like myself. When I walk into a showroom and see a bunch of antiques, I don't know necessarily if something is particularly special or if I'm just drawn to it. But as you've said, like, just buy what you love. It's less about the importance in, uppercase of a piece and more about your connection to it emotionally, I guess.
Right. I think there is that inner draw, I call it the still small voice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you listen to that still small voice, like when I saw that armoire, even though I was dead set on buying a desk, I listened to that still small voice. I came home with that armoire and I've loved it, forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think don't override that, still small voice,
Mm-hmm.
listen. And I should listen more is all.
Well, we're wrapping up, but I do have a few questions about your book. Someone asked how long it took you to write the book.
Oh, haha. So, you know, I wrote a book. I ran into someone at a veranda function in New York, and she said, "I know you have a book in you." I said, "I sure do." And so she said, "Send it to me." It was Jill Cohen. So I sent it to her, and it's called The Coat My Father Gave Me. So it was about 260 pages, and I started writing it in '04. So she said, "This will not be your first book. You know, what your first book is going to be is it's going to be on antiquity and what you know about antiquity from guerrilla antiquing all those years."
Mhm.
So we flipped that back around, and it was out in 2 years,
Wow.
this book, Soul of the Home. But it really took 2 years to really get it where I wanted it.
Mhm.
So I love Abrams. I mean, they have been so generous to me. And it is like working, you know, with your own family, but working with Abrams Publishing. So
Well, it's an absolutely stunning book. Congratulations to you. And I want to tell everybody who's been with us that you can get copies of it at tarashaw.com, as well as some local bookstores and Hazelnut. And thank you, Tara, for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
you know, I just say follow your heart, you know, buy things that you love, just listen to the still small voice, and your home is going to be a beautiful collection of your own vision, because, you know, it should be a reflection of you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight and your beautiful photos. And everybody, I encourage you to go check out this book. You can get signed copies at tarashaw.com. And I can't wait to come see the new showroom.
Thank you, Susan. I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to see you.
I know. Such a pleasure. Have a
Thank
good night.
Take care. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.